It began with a sound no soldier ever forgets, the hollow slam of a heavy steel door, echoing through the barracks like a war drum. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was supposed to be home, a place of brotherhood and discipline, a place where soldiers were trained to respect one another and protect the weak. Yet on that night, all that unspoken code shattered in a single moment of humiliation. She had barely made it through another grueling day of drills when the colonel, a man whose rank should have symbolized honor, grabbed her by the collar and shoved her head into the cold, filthy water of a toilet. The shock of it stole her breath, the weight of his hand pressing her down, making it impossible to resist. The stench of rust and bleach burned her nose and her lungs screamed for air. It was not just her dignity being drowned in that moment, but her sense of belonging, her belief that this uniform meant she was part of something greater. If you believe in kindness and second chances, and in standing up against cruelty no matter where it hides, please take a moment to like this video, share it, leave a comment, and subscribe to Armed Forces Stories. Your support helps us keep telling the stories that matter. When he finally released her, coughing and trembling, she stumbled to the floor. The barracks were silent. Not one soldier moved to help her, not because they didn't care, but because fear had bound them tighter than any chains. The colonel was a man whose reputation could end careers with a whisper, whose eyes could reduce the toughest recruits to silence. And so they all stood there, eyes lowered, pretending not to see what had just happened. She felt their shame as much as her own, an emptiness cutting through her chest sharper than the humiliation itself. Her name was Sergeant Elena Torres, a sniper whose record was nothing short of extraordinary. She had clawed her way into the ranks not through privilege, but through sheer determination. Every mark she hit, every grueling mile she ran, was a fight to prove that she belonged. Being one of the few women in a world still dominated by men was never easy, but Elena had never asked for easy. She only asked for fairness. And yet, as she sat there on the cold tile floor, dripping with water that stank of bleach, she felt a betrayal deeper than anything she had endured on the battlefield. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on her bunk staring at the rifle she had earned through years of sweat and sacrifice. The weapon was polished, perfect, a reflection of her discipline. But her reflection, blurred in the metal, showed her a woman cracked by shame. She asked herself if it was worth it anymore, worth the fight, worth the silence, worth the dream she had chased since childhood of wearing that uniform with pride. Her heart screamed to run, to disappear, to never again face the colonel or the silent eyes of her comrades. But deeper still was another voice, quieter yet stronger, that whispered, "If you walk away now, he wins. If you stay silent, he will do this again, to you or to someone else." The next day, the base carried on as if nothing had happened. The colonel barked orders, drills resumed, and the soldiers moved in rigid obedience. Elena marched with them, her face unreadable, but inside a storm brewed. She was no longer the same woman who had walked into those barracks days before. Something had shifted. She had been humiliated, yes, but humiliation is a spark. For some it destroys, but for others it ignites. She began her quiet fight. Not with fists, not with weapons, but with resolve. She doubled down on her training, pushing her body harder than ever. She volunteered for the most difficult assignments, the tasks others avoided. When they ran 5 miles, she ran 10. When they fired 100 rounds, she stayed behind to fire 200. She turned her pain into discipline, her anger into focus, and slowly the base began to notice. Soldiers who once looked away began to watch, their silence shifting into something else. Respect. Rumors began to circulate, whispers of what the colonel had done. Soldiers who had remained silent that night now carried guilt, and guilt is a heavy burden. One by one, they began to confide in her, small gestures at first, a nod of solidarity, a quiet word of encouragement. She said nothing, but her eyes told them enough. She was not broken. She was stronger than before. Weeks passed, and her chance came unexpectedly. A training exercise was scheduled, one that required precision sniping under impossible conditions, wind, distance, and near darkness. It was a test meant to intimidate, to break confidence. Elena stepped up, calm and steady, her rifle an extension of her heartbeat. One by one, she hit the targets with unerring accuracy, each shot a defiance against the memory of that toilet and the hand that had forced her down. When the last target shattered, the base erupted in awe. She hadn't just passed. She had surpassed them all. The colonel was there, watching. His jaw tightened, his pride bruised, but his authority remained. For now. Because fate, as it often does, had something greater planned. A month later, during a formal ceremony where performance and conduct were being evaluated by visiting officers, Elena was called to the stage. She walked with steady steps, the weight of her journey carried in every movement. The colonel stood nearby, his expression cold, but before he could speak, a silence fell over the room. Into the hall walked a man whose very presence made the air shift. A four-star general, the kind of leader whose reputation stretched far beyond the walls of the base. The general took the podium, his voice deep and measured. He spoke not of strategy, not of politics, but of dignity, of respect, of the sacred bond between soldiers. And then, to the shock of everyone in the room, he turned his gaze to Elena. He said her name aloud, acknowledging her resilience, her skill, her unshakable discipline. And in front of the entire base, he looked at her, and then he turned to the colonel. His words cut sharper than any blade. On behalf of this institution, I apologize for what was done to you. What you endured does not reflect our values. You did not break. You reminded us what strength truly looks like. The room froze. No one moved. No one breathed. A four-star general, humbling himself before a sergeant, apologizing not in secret but publicly. It was unheard of. Soldiers who had once stayed silent now erupted into applause, the sound echoing like thunder across the hall. Elena stood there, tears burning her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She stood tall, head high, no longer the woman forced down, but the soldier who had risen. The colonel's face turned pale. His power had been stripped away in a single moment, his cruelty laid bare for all to see. He was removed from his post soon after, his career shattered not by bullets or bombs, but by truth. Elena remained on the base, not as a victim, but as a symbol. Soldiers sought her out for guidance. Young recruits looked at her as proof that resilience could defy cruelty. She carried the scars of humiliation, yes, but she carried them like medals, reminders of the day she refused to break, and of the day justice finally spoke. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that true strength is not in power but in resilience, please take a moment to like this video, share it, subscribe to Armed Forces Stories, and leave your thoughts below. Your support helps keep stories like Elena's alive. Special request, in the comments, write what real strength means to you. Is it power, or is it the courage to rise after being broken? And so her story ends not with silence, but with applause, not with shame, but with dignity restored. She was the soldier who had been forced down, but who stood taller than them all in the end.